नहीं वो बनाना पड़ेगा अपना नाम नहीं लिखना
The debate will include brief presentations from the selected projects carried out by the EU in India, focusing on the waste and water sectors. The day will conclude with the main recommendations for policy making and the practical applications towards resource efficiency in India. With this, may I request Mr. Johan Hesse, Head of Development Cooperation, EU Delegation to India, and Mr. Timo Makela to kindly proceed for the traditional lighting of the lamp ceremony. Thank you very much. I would like to request Dr. Hesse to kindly address the audience and share the evolution of EU development cooperation with India.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, before we talk about development cooperation, let me also welcome you very much to today's conference, which is about to share best practice on the issue of waste and water, but in the context of the resource efficiency and the circular economy. And as Tapinder said, today's meeting is actually a follow-up to yesterday's more policy-oriented policy dialogue EU-India Environment Forum, which also discussed the issue of resource efficiency and circular economy in meeting environmental challenges. So yesterday was the day for policy dialogue and more policy issues and strategic issues, and today we are discussing more the concrete initiatives, the approaches, the projects and the activities that are going on in this area with our cooperation, with the EU cooperation. So we will hear today a lot of examples of what concrete contribution the European Union already makes today on this issue. And I think it's very, very relevant to discuss these concrete contributions that we already make because of, first of all, the flagship initiatives of the new government of India. So the Swachh Bharat, of course, is the one to mention here because we already make a contribution in this area. I am also think it's very timely and very relevant organization who is implementing that. So when we say EU project, I'd just like to clarify, the ownership is with the organization as a beneficiary. And the other thing I'd like to clarify is that whatever we are talking about here, this is money which is coming to India not as a loan, but it's coming as a grant. So it's a very important issue because we also have other organizations, other institutions that are in charge to provide loans. And for example, we have the European Investment Bank at the level of the Union, and the European Investment Bank is responsible to provide loans. So all that we are talking about here, at the end of the day, they are grants. And this was just a bit the few words of introduction. I wanted to tell you about what is the EU cooperation about in India. And as I said, yesterday was a day of policies and strategies, and today is a day of concrete actions, concrete best practices, very pointy things, the lesson learned from your activities. Really what we are interested in, what I'm personally also very much interested in, is your stories about what works in your areas, but also what doesn't work. I mean, please feel free to also tell us a bit what doesn't work. I mean, I don't know about you, but when it comes to me for learning something, I mean, it's very interesting sometimes to hear somebody giving a speech and listening attentively. But to tell you the truth, sometimes I learn much quicker if I make a mistake, and then I have to correct something. So please don't be shy to also tell us 1 or 2 points that did not work so well, while you have made a mistake and you have learned a lesson. I think for some of us it is just as interesting to hear those things than the nice stories and the rosy picture. So really, don't be honest. I mean, I think what is really interesting for us is to hear the very honest experience that we have. So let's look at some practical and concrete contribution of what this is all about: resource efficiency and the circular economy in waste and in water. I wish all of us a very good conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hesse. May I now kindly request Mr. Makela to share the key policy challenges and feedback from the 7th EU-India Environment Forum.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. I'm actually coming from Brussels. I work for the environmental policy issues in the European Union context. This is actually my institution, European Commission, who initiates all the policies of the European Union, and also is responsible for making sure that these policies and legislations are implemented. So I actually want to take a bit step back what you heard earlier and try to explain to you why we from the European Union side want to cooperate with India on environmental issues. And of course this goes far beyond the programs. So we have a policy dialogue, and India for the European Union is an important global player in the environmental policy, and of course that's our interest to work with India. Our policy, environmental policy in the European Union is guided by European Union's 7th Environmental Action Programme, which was endorsed by our member states some year ago, and of course which gives us a direction where we in the European Union want to go. And of course global issues play a role in that program.
Day before yesterday, the 14th Finance Commission report was launched, and it has been accepted by the government, wherein for the first time the total devolution of funds from the center to the state has been increased from 32% to 42%. So that leads to a huge amount of resources for the states in terms of taking such initiatives forward. So before going to the details in terms of what kind of options are available and how to take those options forward, I would like to just give you a brief overview of the situation in terms of the resources consumption over the last 50-60 years, and what is the implication of such resource demand not only in India but also globally. So if we look at the total consumption of resources for the last 60 years, it increased from almost 40 billion tons to close to 70 billion tons. So almost like 1.5 times, a little more than 1.5 times increase in the last so many years. And the major consumer has been Asia, and as you can see that the share of the consumption of resources in Asia to the total global consumption has been somewhere between 45 and 50%. Now that is the total scenario so far the demand is concerned, but there are implications with regard to economic, social and environmental. We have seen the rise in demand for resources resulted in rise in commodity prices, increased volatility, because there has been concentration of resources in certain economies, and mostly the developing economies. There are various social conflicts. There has been increase in the trade distortionary practices. Substitution of many of these resources have been challenging. There are critical constraints in terms of providing labor, land, water availability, as well as the technology and the technical services that are required in terms of harnessing those resources. There has been a growing concern, particularly by the environmental organizations and the civil society organizations, and their claim has been towards increasing ecological protection and greater transparency, particularly by the mining companies. So this was an exercise that we did as a part of our previous assignment with GIZ, wherein we looked at the Human Development Indicator or the index, as well as the direct material consumption per capita. And as you can see that most of the developing countries are on the right hand topmost corner, wherein the developing countries are on the left hand bottom corner. Now India lies somewhere here, so we have a Human Development Index of 0.5 and a direct material consumption of almost 4 tons per capita. Now if we have two options, so either follow the trajectory, the curve that we actually see on the graph, or there is an option of actually tunneling through that particular curve and follow more or less a horizontal approach and reach a higher level of Human Development Index, at the same time not affecting much our material consumption. So that is where we are going to discuss today, that how we are going to actually tunnel through that particular process and reach an area which is towards the right hand corner, but not obviously towards somewhere above that particular curve. If you look at the material consumption of India, this was an estimate that was undertaken for the year 2008, wherein we see that the consumption has been much less compared to the world average, the Chinese average, and the averages in the OECD. The average consumption of resources in the building sector, our construction sector has grown almost at the 10%, 8 to 10% over the last 12 years. And the housing stock is estimated to increase from 30 million housing units that was estimated in 2011 to almost 770 million housing units by 2030. So typical house of say around 65 to 70 square meters will consume the kind of consumption it will have, and it was estimated based on that the total resource consumption for this category of housing will be around 3 billion tons, wherein we are looking at consumption of cement, steel, aluminium, brick, aggregates, glass, copper, ceramic tiles, PVC, marbles, paint, and grey iron. Now then we started to look at what are the options or the existing in terms of achieving resource efficiency in this particular sector. So if the conventional bricks are replaced with the aerated concretes, it can reduce it by 0.71 billion tons. With Stratec, 0.25 billion tons, both aerated as well as Stratec comes to around 0.78 billion tons. Building with insulation that will eventually reduce the demand for fossil fuels will have an implication of total resource saving of 0.66 billion tons. Aerated concrete with insulation, 1.33 billion tons, and finally with the aerated concrete, Stratec and insulation, almost 1.4 billion tons. Now, in terms of the approach of managing wastes, there has been certain literature to what kind of intervention that can be identified. I'm not going into the specifics of those interventions, maybe that will be discussed throughout the course of the day, but it is more of understanding what to do first, and then if not possible, then what to do next. Literature says that there are 5 ways how we can in fact manage wastes. The first and the foremost option is minimizing waste, followed by reuse, material recycling, energy recovery, and waste disposal. Now this hierarchy has a rationale wherein the first option which we look at is the waste minimization is able to in fact preserve the total energy embedded in a particular resource. So you need not have to actually go for additional consumption. You can in fact produce a particular product in such a way that it can eventually increase the life time of that product to be used. If it is not possible, then obviously it will be going for a reuse, followed by material recycling, the energy recovery, as well as waste disposal. Now in India, what are the drivers basically that will promote these various interventions? The price difference between the primary and secondary raw materials will be one of the key drivers, followed by the availability and access of those raw materials. What are the possibility of substitution that is available, as well as the market structure, particularly the demand for those various kind of resources. We do have opportunities. We have seen some of the the initiatives of the government, but apart from that, conventionally we have been able to come out with a very strong list of policies, though to what extent they have been implemented is a little bit questionable, but that needs for a regulatory framework that has more tooth to the structure.
To go to this passive concept, which basically is a building that uses very little energy in terms of heating or air conditioning, if you want, in the Indian situation, because of the way it is built. So that resource efficiency, fossil fuel, more domestic extraction, more imports, two options. Well, third option, savings, and the way in which you build a house or you try to retrofit an already existing house can have important consequences both for your electricity bill but also in terms of the heating cost, and that is something that could be part of thinking about resource efficiency and how to implement it in India. The second aspect, again, the automotive industry. You can do cars that are, I don't know, lighter, consume less, and so on and so forth. But in a way, and I hope there is no one from the automotive industry here, the best car is the one that doesn't exist. So we don't necessarily need cars, we need mobility. And I've been sitting in quite a few traffic jams in New Delhi these days. I can tell you that Brussels is not much better. However, in Brussels, you have alternatives. You take the bus, well, the bus or the tram is as stuck as the car, but you have the metro at least. I myself, I've given up using the car going downtown because, first of all, you are stressed. You hate your fellow co-drivers around you. You get to the place, you have to find a parking lot, you don't find a parking lot, you are more stressed, you are late for your meetings, and so on. Okay, now I'm taking the metro, much more relaxed. You have a few drawbacks, may not be so frequent, and you are not listening to your preferred music and so on. But you have that kind of alternative. So, looking at resource efficiency in the automotive industry is certainly how you build your car, yes, but it's the global perspective of how mobility is constructed. And that is where this concept of leapfrogging can indeed be used to seeing at the best practices elsewhere, Europe or in other places. As been mentioned both yesterday and today, this partnership instrument, Johan has already indicated some of its aspects, and it is in the context, or actually it is through the use of this partnership instrument that we are thinking of doing a specific project on resource efficiency in India. I can't say much because the internal formal procedures are not finished, so in terms of the scope and content we will need to see, but the idea is to look at certain areas where European experience could contribute in order to improve resource efficiency in certain sectors. And bearing in mind what Johan said quite rightly earlier today, the partnership instrument is not a development cooperation instrument. So it's not going to be the same kind of philosophy, here we come and we help you with our grant and then you can do your project. The partnership instrument is meant to support actions that are of the mutual benefit of both India and the European Union. So also in terms of our know-how, in terms of our businesses, in terms of the experience we have, this is what the partnership instrument is also about. So in coming months we will be finalizing the terms of reference, the actual project will be done through an open call. the colleagues in the delegation here in Delhi will oversee the whole management of the project, but it's something where we hope really to be able to make a change.
We discussed issues like, cost benefits, but mainly we discussed issues of policy issues, whether the environment we are working in is enabling the development of wastewater treatment and valorization technologies or not. One of the things we found out, for instance, that especially in Italy, the policy context is not very supportive to the development of technologies in the field of wastewater treatment and valorization. In India, it's the same, because at least I don't know what you have been discussing yesterday, but the participant in the workshop, because it was a joint meeting with the Indian partners and the European partners, and the Indian partners brought forward that because of lacking legislation in the field of wastewater reuse for agricultural purposes, that environment is not very conducive for the development of technologies in the field of wastewater treatment. Okay, so that was very interesting, and that first stage helped us to identify a gross list of business opportunities. What we also found out during that process, especially after that meeting, is that the developers of these technologies did not have a good understanding or insight into the cost and benefits of the technologies and the treatments they are working on. And if you don't have a good insight in cost and benefits, whether it are financial cost and benefits or societal cost and benefits, then it is very difficult to talk to potential clients. So it is still really a challenge in this project, because this project is very much technology driven, research driven, and then it is very difficult to bring these technologies on the market. So anyway, we decided that we should focus in that phase of the project, we should focus on assisting the developers of these technologies in getting insight into these costs and benefits. So we organized a trajectory in which they were assisted to do a cost-benefit analysis. And we brought them again together. The first Innova Platform meeting was a combined meeting, in the sense that we invited people from the Water for Crops Indian part and the Water for Crops European part. The second Innova Platform meeting was bringing together people from Europe only. But it brought together the researchers again, industries, clients, potential clients of the different technologies they are working on, investors. So they all work together on this cost-benefit analysis. And at the end of that step, we identified a short list of potential business cases, what we call.
And dear friends and colleagues from the EU delegation and all other distinguished participants in this event, it's happy to see so many people here on spot. And I hope that this afternoon right now will be a lot of hands-on discussions and presentations on the matter about waste management and wastewater treatment in India, two important issues. Myself, I'm also working as team leader on an environment tech program here in EU. So it is starting up right now. We're focusing on waste to energy and also wastewater management. Wastewater management. As a chairman, or trying to be moderator here also, you always have the freedom to open up a little bit. So I will do that, a little bit of challenging what we are ahead of us on these discussions. What I think is one of the more important things right now we are facing is the rapid changing economic scenarios in India, resulting in a what I would say, continuous migration of people from rural into urban areas. It goes very rapidly, and this is not only for India, it's worldwide also. We become more and more in urban, and in the next century, by the 2030, I would guess 60% or even more of the world population will live in urban areas. And this rapid change and transition causes a lot of stress, and I think that's why what we are going to discuss here. So it's not only the problems that leads to, but also cities become, what I say, a hub, a possibility, an intellectual capacity building hub for the sustainable development or circular economy that we talk about here when we're talking about waste issues. But as we heard from the presentation by Thierry here early on, the rapid transformation in India right now, with only 17% 1951 and now up to more than 30-40% 2013, is a very rapid change. So, and also the number of towns in India has increased from 5,000 up to 7,000 new townships. So it is enormous sort of development we are facing right now. And that causes, of course, it causes definitely a negative effects on the environment. We see that already by water pollution and by waste management, lacking of waste management and so forth. And it also has a lot of sustainability and social economic challenges to deal with. I would say also the uncontrolled growth in urban areas have left many Indian cities deficient in infrastructure service such as water supply, sewerage, stormwater drainage and solid waste management. Because the rapid inflow of people to the cities has right now not been properly handled. The other thing is also, right now we can say that only 30% of the urban Indians are connected to any sort of pipe sewer system, and roughly 12-13%, that's about 50 million people, defecate in the open. And this is something we don't talk too much about, but that's something very problematic, especially in urban areas. So the challenges is not only to provide, it's an enormous need to provide both sanitation facilities of disposal. And also large part of the modern cities remain unconnected to the sewage system. A major chunk of inhabitants are living in unauthorized or illegal areas or slums, which the state service doesn't reach at all. And this is quite evident for us.
Setting up like systems in place. And then of course the bulk generators, the bulk consumers, the public and the private sector. And then you have individual consumers. All of us who are present here could be channelized through schools, colleges and residential associations, because of course reaching out to households is the most difficult part. And when we started, we did some baseline studies where we kind of said that okay, 70% of the waste in India is generated by the bulk consumers, but 30%, which is the individual consumers, the households, how do you actually tap waste from them? Because that's a very essential channel, and a lot many times, whether it's a formal recycler, whether it's a producer, they face challenges when it comes to a B2C channel. And that's where we kind of were involved. And then as you see in the photo on the right side, this the entire issue of e-waste is currently as well, even when we have 130 recyclers, it's still being handled by the informal recyclers, informal sector. And I think it's a big issue when it comes to the emissions which happen, and also not just to their health, the hazards which are posed to the entire environment as such. So this is still a much cleaner picture, but there are, like I think we have shared a lot many times, there are thousands of pictures where if you go to areas like Shastri Park, Silampur, Mandoli, which is very close to this area, and you'll actually see how hazardous these operations are and how people are actually handling waste. So certain figures and numbers, I think yesterday I mentioned, this is just 65 million computers in the country which is generated in 2010, and now we are already in 15. So it's a huge number when it comes to generation of e-waste in the country. Then 14 million mobile handsets which were replaced with the new ones in 2008. And these figures we are giving are old, so that you can just make a projection, okay, 5 years down the line, where do we stand in our numbers? And yeah, as I mentioned, still 90% of the waste is handled by the informal sector. And where, of course, whether it's individual consumers, whether it's bulk consumers, there's very little awareness when it comes to how do you actually dispose waste in the right manner. I'll just click this total. So this is what the entire project looked like. So we had our overall project boundary as a policy framework, because that time it was just evolving. We submitted a draft to the ministry, and we were kind of visualizing of how this entire policy would look like, because there was just one instance of battery waste which was before, where the entire clause of EPR, extended producer responsibility, was mentioned. So with this policy, we were proposing that let's give the responsibility to producers to handle the waste. So that was our overall policy framework, where we said we'll suggest 4 work packages of how this entire project looks like. So of course we have policy and dialogues, we have research and development issues where we do baseline assessments, we talk about green products in the country, we talk about cooperation models, and then we do of course a lot of capacity building, not just at the level of SMEs, but also at the government level, the national, state, and the producers as well. And then the entire, as I mentioned, the objective was to channelize waste. So we said, okay, why not include this 90% of the people who are actually handling waste into a formal chain than just saying, okay, let's just close their shops. So that's why we kind of said formalize, include them as much as possible in the trade chain, otherwise they will just be competing with the formal recyclers and they'll never be a part of the mainstream system. So that's why we said integrate the informal sector, and that's where our entire work package, all the activities were just on finding who these people are, where are they situated, how can they make this shift, and how can you actually formalize them into a formal chain. So that's why we kind of, as you see on the top, there were 2, even in the rules which were drafted that time, there were 2 major stakeholders, the formal sector and the manufacturers of IT and the consumer electronics. So we said, let's introduce a new term, let's introduce a new stakeholder group, which is a formalized informal sector, which you see in the green box, which we kind of painted. But of course, municipality also has a very crucial role to play. What happens to the entire the historic waste which is there, because no one takes the responsibility of the historic waste. So of course you have a producer who's producing, but once the producer is out, who is responsible for that? So those kind of waste were given to a municipality. So we worked in Pune and Bangalore exclusively with the municipalities. And it also just depended on who, where takes the ownership. So for instance, in Pune, the Pune municipality said, I'm going to support the entire setup of the formalization of the informal sector, and they have groups like Swachh, which is a cooperative of close to 20,000 rag pickers, and they said, I'm going to give them space, because land is the biggest constraint. They said, let me give them space and let them handle waste. Of course, municipality gave space, it had its own issues, it took us 3 years almost, and that was I think what Dr. Jehan was mentioning in the morning, that what didn't work and what works. So here I would like to highlight that of course municipality took the leadership, but the State Pollution Control Board said, oh, give me a paper which says how do they own this land. Now we could never imagine that someone in the government doesn't know where does this land come from. Now these were experiences, and it just took, and of course EU wanted to show us a deliverable, and so I think for us it was quite difficult to kind of say within the 3 years now this cooperative is set up and this is the legal structure. So because it was a big shift, it was just not a shift, it was a shift to the informal sector to formalize. For this entire business that they were doing was now formal, it was legal, they had to submit returns, they had to invest. So for them it was a big shift, and for Pollution Control Board, for them to recognize, for municipality to give them space. So this entire project could actually link a lot of things which were there in the policy into how it could be translated on the ground. And I think there I found the project as a successful, but of course we had huge issues when it comes to the entire setup. Then on the environmental impact, if we say, as I mentioned, the informal sector handled waste, and still they handle a lot, but the formalized SMEs, people who are part of our network now, at least they don't do open burning, they don't strip cables to remove copper as much as possible. So they actually follow a lot of legal process, because what they do is majorly collect and dismantle in few areas like in Bangalore, and then they give to a formal recycler. So they don't do the entire material recovery on its own.
Next speaker is Mr. Imani Kumar from ICLEI, who will present on key policy lessons from Southeast Asia towards zero waste.
Thank you. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to present about this project Sunya towards zero waste in South Asia. I'll just talk about the organization which I represent is ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, leading network of cities all over the world. We have more than 1,000 cities as our members. And its mission is to build and serve a worldwide movement of local governments to achieve tangible improvements. We are much more talking about on local actions through cumulative environmental initiatives. Technologies as well as with how to involve the stakeholders, and we also have Association of Flemish Cities and Municipalities from Belgium. Project activities, if I have to talk about, obviously we looked into the waste management situation in all the project cities. I'm happy to tell you that Funchling and even Hettuwada as an outcome, actually they have not even talked about, there was no solid waste management, they were not thinking about solid waste management in those cities, but right now today they started talking about waste management, they are talking about a plan and how to go ahead and implement that. So that one thing, I'll put it like this project has really taken up in those cities. And capacity building of micro program at local levels, both officials and stakeholders. As I said, that a lot of trainings have been happened, local level meetings have taken place, a lot of events and campaigns have also done on this. Pilot implementation, I'll just talk about how they have happened and which are those ones in 5 or 6 cities. And also the development of a strategy to sustain these impacts. I think one of the things came up in the morning inaugural session also. Why only pilots? Like only a lot of these donor agencies come and put money into the pilots. But how do you sustain those projects once the pilot, once the donor agency has left them or the project is over? Can that city government, can the provincial government or the state government, the national government can take it forward that? So that is what we are trying to achieve under this, and I'm happy to say that's not that boasting too much, but I'm happy to say maybe 50 to 60% we have achieved that. Remaining 40% still needs to be, but which is not in my hands to tell that because the state government or the national governments to take it forward on that. 5 pilot projects, one on the Coimbatore is a zero waste management in 23rd Ward. I'll just show you, this is one thing happened in the Ward 23 in Coimbatore. She is not the chief minister right now, but this is a poster which has been used under that when they started talking about. This is one ward. What they have done is they have started reducing the recycling, reusing and reducing the waste in the particular ward. By involving the Safai Karmakaris, the municipal waste workers, the waste collection workers, who are part of this particular system. If you can ask me, like, are they not part of the system before the project started? They are part of the project before they are part of the system before the project started. But they got a lot of incentives after this project started by not only collecting the waste, by collecting the recycling waste and also selling that waste to ITC, which is right now collecting it, and also getting money back given by the ITC into their own accounts. You talk about the new government, talk about more on the Jan Dhan Yojana, a lot of accounts and all. So all these Safai Karmacharis, they have their accounts filled with money based on whatever the recycled waste has been sold to the company, to the ITC and all that. So there is one thing happened in that city, in that one particular ward, ward number 23, which also have been discussed quite well even in the provincial level assembly in Chennai, in Tamil Nadu. Right now, what is going to happen in this particular city is that now they're extending to all the 100 wards. So one ward, whatever the success they have done that. And the state government is now putting a lot of money into that to showcase that, as bring that as experience as one of the model for the Tamil Nadu state, and they want to take it. The Directorate of Municipal Administration at state level wants to implement now that in other 120 odd municipalities. So that one thing I'm happy the state government recognizes that what is happening in that city and taking it forward.
The deep sewer line construction is not required because the catchment area is very less. The treatment happens very near to the source of generation. So in that way we negate the use of extensive laying of sewer line. Through DWATS, we do be compliant to effluent discharge standards as laid by the Pollution Control Board. The system is tolerant to inflow fluctuations, and a very important aspect, it's a passive system, so the energy footprint is very less, does not require moving parts, so requires very minimal energy, and most importantly the maintenance part of it. If you see in terms of the treatment efficiency across different modules, after the planted gravel filter we achieve the BOD of 20. So in terms of the discharge standards, anything less than 30 can be safely discharged into the surface water bodies. So through this we can safely comply with the norms as laid by the Pollution Control Board. So just a kind of pictorial representation that how the wastewater looks when it enters into the DWATS module, and after the polishing point you can see the clarity of the water. And another important aspect of DWATS is since it is a civil construction, most of the units are underground, and in terms of the urban scenario where the space is very constrained, the surface of the DWATS can be used for various purposes, like either a playground can be done in this picture. A badminton court has been made on the settler, so the treatment unit is underground. Another area like for parking we can use, then it can be nicely integrated with the landscape of the city. So in that way, this unit as such can be nicely integrated, and that's why we can save a lot on the space requirement. So the whole idea of the DWATS is that how we close the loop. So within a household, the wastewater can be collected through biogas under settlers. So the biogas can be used for cooking. The wastewater can be used for for flushing and for other non-potable purposes, as well as the sludge from the biogas can be used for the land application. So the idea is that how do we close the loop. And there are a couple of this project that I have just mentioned. Maybe I don't go in detail through each of them. The whole idea is that if you can see, it's ranging for various volumes of wastewater, and in terms that the application is we can apply for a single household, to the large townships, to the industrial areas where only we treat the domestic part of it. So in that way, as I mentioned, we can treat as low volume as 1 cubic meter to as high as 1 mld of wastewater in a day. So these are a couple of our projects ongoing, and the major project, the highest volume project what we are doing is in Ahmedabad. It's a 1 mld project. And this is the civil construction reward. So what we also do is that to really turn around the construction time and have a quicker implementation. So we have also construction facility for the prefabricated DWATS, and we have two volumes, one for 4 cubic meter and 7 cubic meter. So if you put in a series of combination, then through that we can also treat in the range of 3 to 150 cubic meter. So that's another area which we are working on. And again, a couple of pictures of the DWATS project what we have done. In Bangalore, I don't know if you happen to be around, one of the key metro stations, the MG Road, we have a DWATS installed there.
The presentation that I'm going to give to you today primarily focuses on a couple of issues which we have done, implemented and experienced and seen that it works in the framework that we work in. Along with that, it's far more inclusive in the kind of societal aspects that we work in. Been hearing about a lot of things since morning where I seem to understand that we've been touching on a lot of economic aspects around the problems that we are facing. But I think a large part of this rests with the sociological aspect of how we think around problems that we are facing right now and the kind of solutions that we try to find for those problems and implement those in respective locales in which we stay as well. So I'll just start with this question: when is waste wasted? So a lot of the waste that we generate, as we know right now, and we're talking of resource efficiency, a lot of the waste that we generate is basically resource. So whether that's wet waste, which can be turned into compost and then used as manure for agricultural or horticultural purposes, or dry waste, which is resource in itself and can go back into recycling and can be reused once again. Certain figures which I'm sure everyone is aware of right now, the kind of waste that we're generating in terms of the quantum, the greenhouse gases that are coming out because of poor waste handling, and what can be composted which is not being done right now, and filling up landfills in cities, making huge mountains out of them. Just a photograph to show how a dump site looks like. You have large amount of these dogs around in these dump sites in Delhi as well. This is one photograph which has been taken from the landfill in Ghazipur, which is about 10 kilometers from here. And you can see the methane emission coming out of the leachate that has been collected in the landfill itself. Per se, people living around these landfill sites, even up to the extent of about 5-6 kilometers, and that's the number at the end of the slide states it all. It's a number which has been stated about 3 days ago by the Minister of Urban Development, Mr. Venkaiah Naidu. They end up spending about 6,500 rupees per annum just on medical expenses, which are resulting out of poor waste handling in urban spaces in India. We all know about the number. We were treated to this number in the morning by Shavik from Terry, about 2 million waste pickers who are in the informal sector and doing waste handling per se on a day-to-day basis, picking up trash from different areas, recycling it, and then earning a livelihood for themselves. In a sense, what they're doing is answering the larger question that we're posing for ourselves at different forums, reducing greenhouse gases and conserving precious resources for us. The work, as we all know, is hazardous. There's a lot of occupational health and safety issues which are there, particularly for people working in landfill sites, the kind of waste that they're handling. They have a lot of issues which are related to different kinds of diseases, issues related to dog bites which happen over there, issues even related to the extent of being run over by dumping trucks which are there on the landfill sites and go and dump over there. So there have been huge amounts of accidents which get reported, which happen but never get reported kind of. So there's brutality and discrimination which happens, and we are, as a society, we are all a part of it right now.
I think you all have given extremely good examples to put things into practice. So in that sense, we are fully following Additional Secretary Sushil Kumar's remarks in the opening of this meet. I'm very happy for that. And I think it's a very high quality of all this project. I have got through your documents a little bit about it. And I like them very much because they are very much hands-on. I mean, you provide really technical solutions, really, and also putting pilot cases which could be scaled up. Especially also, I think, the pedagogic way, involving them, organizing them on the e-waste and also on the rag pickers and all that aspects. I think that has been extremely good examples of EU program put into real practice. I think that's extremely good. Well, I should not talk anymore. I possibly will do that anyhow. But I will look to open the floor for questions and comments. And in that we'll include Dr. Groot and also Dr. Shuik, who have also the questions in the first session. So please don't forget them also to target them. So please, the floor is open for comments and questions. But please keep them not too long.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Prashant Rajankar. I am from Toxic Link. My question is to Mr. Rahul Sachdeva for CD decentralized wastewater system. Can you? Yes. Okay. So, as we have seen that and mentioned in your presentation, this is a wonderful project and experiment for centralized wastewater system. And we have seen that is underground, and above ground we are working for some parking space, some playground, and something like metro station kind of things, right? So how the monitoring mechanism works in that scenario, because underground experiment is going on. In that case, how monitoring mechanism works? And another question is maintenance scenario. So can you put focus on these two issues?
When I say that when we use it underground, that does not mean it is completely sealed, because mostly the units what we put underground is the settler and what we call as the anaerobic baffle reactor. ABR is a kind of series of chambers in which this treatment happens, and we do have this monitoring points. So you can always kind of do the desludging activity through that. So only thing what is required is that the sludge which accumulates at the bottom of the tank over a period of time, like depending on your desludging frequency, either is a 2-year or 3-year as per the design, you just have to agitate that, put a pipe, and then you just take it out. So beyond that, there is no other maintenance such, because since it does not involve any moving part, there is no point of breakdown as such. So it is a natural process which is happening in under anaerobic condition, and so we have a proper vents also given along the wherever we are putting the units, so that there is no smell around. So in that sense, the use as such does not hinder your operation and maintenance process as such.
But what happens to the waste, especially in Nepal where the infrastructure is so poor? What happens to the waste when it is segregated, and is it dumped in the landfill again, or there are any mechanisms that the waste is treated separately?
Yeah, if you ask that in Coimbatore, it's happening. They've reduced the waste for the landfill site, so that way up to some extent it is good.
Mr. Pradeep Mathur, who is an advisor, EUSPP, and he will discuss water policy interventions by the Government of India, the Rajasthan example.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would take this opportunity to thank the organizers of this workshop and the European Union and Dr. Hess in particular, who have given me an opportunity to share our experiences in implementing the state partnership program in Rajasthan. As all of us know that Rajasthan is the largest state of the country. It covers about 10% of the area and 5% of the population, but the water resources are very limited, and we have only 1% share of the water resources in the country. Therefore, the water sector becomes a very critical issue and issue of concern for the government. And the European Union has given assistance for implementing the state partnership program in the state. Some of the important objectives of the European Union State Partnership Program are state-wide water sector reforms leading to sustainable and integrated water resources management in the state, and in selected areas of Rajasthan, strengthening of Panchayati Raj institutions for equitable access to safe and adequate, affordable and sustainable water supply and water conservation. These are the main issues which are being addressed under this project. This program is in progress in the state since 2007. The program covers 11 districts, 82 blocks and over 3,000 gram panchayats in the state, which cover more than 11,000 villages. The area covered under this project is more than half of the geographical area of the state. Under this project, the main important activity which we have undertaken is the preparation of the integrated water resources management plans for districts at the gram panchayat level. With the help of non-governmental organizations, that is NGOs, we have prepared the IWR plans for all the 3,000 odd gram panchayats, and the issues which have been addressed in preparation of these IWR plans are the first supply and demand of the water present as well as the projected, water conservation, the groundwater scenario, as well as the quality of the water, which is especially the groundwater, because the quality of groundwater is deteriorating very fast in the entire state. These are the important issues which are addressed in the IWRM plans. To prepare these IWRM plans, the 26 NGOs were hired for preparation of these IWRM plans, and this is the important highlight of implementation of this program, which is being implemented in the state jointly by 6 departments of the state government, mainly concerned with surface water, groundwater, drinking water supply and Panchayat Raj. 6 departments are implementing jointly this program. Another important aspect of this is the capacity building of personnel involved in water sector asserted. With the help of the NGOs and the water resources personnel who are working in the field, we have organized a number of workshops and interdisciplinary meetings for strengthening and capacity building of the Panchayat Raj officials, as well as the villagers and farmers who are involved directly or indirectly in the management of water.
We are also trying to link to that Swachh Bharat mission on this particular thing, and also we have a little bit of discussion on the smart cities thing, also how this particular toolkit can go as a toolkit under the smart cities thing. But this is just only discussions are happening with the Ministry of Urban Development, Government of India. Those are the specific objectives this particular project. Outcomes is obviously there will be a toolkit for Indian cities based on the toolkit of the European one. Capacity building in the project cities to plan water resources using IWM principles. Development of action plans, 2 pilot projects in each city, we are going to implement that, and adaptation of toolkit by the Ministry of Urban Development and dissemination of IWM toolkit on that. As said that this particular project has implications, our project has beneficiaries at all the levels, all the 3 levels of the government here in this country. City level, obviously they are getting the training programs, IWM based actions, implementation of the pilot projects, and at the state level there will be a potential state level IWM committee. Actually we are already formed the committee in Maharashtra and a little bit in Rajasthan. There is a state level workshops are happening. We are happy that the Rajasthan government said that please come and do that. So there is like I don't know how many of you know that even at the national level, I'm sorry to say this, but national level, even at the state level, most of these ministries, they don't talk to each other. So we are giving some sort of a platform to talk to them, to talk to each other and take it forward, the actions which we are taking it forward. And at national level, obviously CPHO has been consulted, and the switch manual will integrate, customize the switch manual to the Indian systems, and MOUD obviously will, they said that they will take it forward on this particular thing.
This is my presentation. As you can see, it is a part of the bigger project, also funded by the European Commission and Government of India. In our case, it's funded by the STI Department of Science and Technology. And the overall project is called Supporting Consolidation, Replication and Upscaling of Sustainable Wastewater Treatment and Reuse Technologies for India. And here now I'm presenting about decentralized wastewater treatment technologies for India, which is a small part of our overall project. And here I'd also like to acknowledge my co-author, my partner here, is Professor Kasmi from the IIT Roorkee, who is the coordinator of our Indian partner consortium of this project, and he is funded by Government of India in that collaboration. So let me start with a definition of what do we mean with decentralized wastewater treatment technologies, because very often there are some misunderstandings. I think you have to be clear that decentralized wastewater treatment technology does not refer to a specific type of technology. Rather, it refers to the number of plants we have in a catchment. So if we have one catchment, and this catchment is served by one single plant, only then we could speak about the centralized treatment technology. But everything else is automatically a decentralized technology. It means in the Indian scenario, I don't know one single centralized wastewater treatment plant. So all the treatment plants in India are naturally decentralized. And what type of wastewater treatment technologies do exist? We have differentiated in these type of groups. We have natural treatment technologies. These usually are types like waste utilization ponds, which is the most common technology used in rural India. Recently we have constructed wetlands, we also planted filters, duckweed ponds and so on. And if you want to find more details about them, I can refer you to a publication which has been published in the Journal of Water Sanitation and Hygiene for Development of IWA, where we looked in detail about the potential of those type of natural treatment technologies for India. The next group usually differ is simple built technologies. Here we mean technologies like septic tanks, ABRs, USBs, AFs, biogas gland splitting filter and so on. We can differ advanced built technologies. Here we refer to technologies based on activated sludge process such as SBRs, MBR, MBR, etc. We also can have physical chemical treatment systems. We can have all types of combinations. A very common combination is DWATS, which usually is a combination of ABR and septic tank and some plastic filter. And also here, we have a publication called A Review on Full-Scale Decentralized Wastewater Treatment Systems, Tech-Economic Approach, which has been published in Water Science and Technology just last year. So, what is the problem with such decentralized technology in India? The main problem is that no comprehensive and independent evaluation exists, in particular about small plants below 5 MED, which means we actually don't know how they are performing. So this is what our project wanted to solve. So we have conducted such an evaluation following a rigorous evaluation methodology, which was our first key question. So how do those actually perform? And the other key question was, are there any better technologies than those that exist already in India? In this we have envisaged from an European angle, so we wanted to see if there are European technologies that have a better potential for the Indian context.
For textile exporters, Cotex, which is represented by Mr. Vikram Joshi, and Infrastructure Leasing and Financial Services Limited, IMFS. So that was the group of partners, and of course we had local NGO partners within 16 textile craft clusters all over the country who supported us in disseminating and holding various advocacy workshops at the ground level. And the second project that I will share with you about is the Going Green project, which started in the year 2014, January of 2014. So we are a little over a year on that project. And it was really good timing for us, because as the Sustainable Textiles project ended, we were able to get the support again to implement a more grassroots-based project called Going Green, where we are focusing more on artisanal clusters, textile artisanal clusters, and looking at ways of where we can find low-cost technologies which can really be made functional at literally the household level. So it's really the second phase of the first project that we developed. Talking about the Sustainable Textiles project, which was the first one to be implemented, which is now concluded successfully, I'd like to share with you some highlights of what we were able to achieve with the collaboration of all the partners, both at the national and at the local level. We were able to reach out to over 3,000 micro and small and medium enterprises and 25 textile parks. These parks have been set up under the Scheme for Integrated Textile parks of the Government of India, through the development and distribution of a toolkit on low-cost technologies, and as well as occupational health and safety. We conducted several dissemination workshops and advocacy events which were held at the state and the national level. In fact, the Ministry of Textiles supported us in that and were present at the meetings. One of the other significant achievements of the projects was a focus on occupational health and safety, which was the first in the textile sector ever in the country. And because of our efforts, the issues got included in the 12th five-year plan, and knowledge sharing of the same was done with over 2,500 MSMEs. Under the project, a model Texcraft Park was established, of course also largely because of the efforts of this consortium of textile exporters. But we are happy to share with you that the Common Effluent Treatment Plant, a very modern state-of-the-art Common Effluent Treatment Plant, which was set under the project, came through the support of this project as well, substantially. 90% of the water used by the units over there is recycled and used in the printing again. Mr. Joshi will be explaining to you more in detail. Water harvesting is another highlights of that project, the park, and a whole lot of water is collected and used in the printing processes. As you know, printing is a very environmentally polluting industry, so this is a way in which we are ensuring that the pollution reduces almost to a negligible level. Occupational health and safety and good social practices are in place in the park. So as I said, it's fully justifiably a model Texcraft Park. Also under the project, we set up 3 small secondary effluent treatment plants, which were set up in Bhuj in Gujarat, and 2 of these in Balotra and Loon Karansar of smaller capacities within units, and they are fully functioning and operating very well. So therefore the environmental damage that the printing was causing over there has been reduced, and also they are models for other units to learn and to replicate, and exposure visits and demonstrations have been done for other visiting units. Another highlights of the project was the training of over 1,000 artisans in block printings and other in textile industry crafts.
There are about 500 textile printing factories in around Jaipur, between Sangam and Bangalore, and 20 of us have moved forward to this stage. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Questions, please? Get a mic.
I'm Sunil Pandey, working in TERI. I had a question to Mr. Joshi about the cluster, the units which are participating in this treatment scheme. Are they only block printing, or they are also engaged into dyeing, because dyeing is more water intensive? And second question is, what's the financial model? I mean, how you support or recover operation maintenance? A capital cost probably was provided under the EU support, but operation maintenance also is substantial cost in such projects.
Well, initially when we started this project, it was largely for the block printers, but knowing the amount of money involved in this project, only 12 members were from the block printing background. When we were setting up this huge treatment plant, we realized that the block printing effluent, the load will be enough to run this plant. So we encouraged some textile processors, because for block printing we need a processed textile. So we encouraged 3 members who had huge machines to process water, and the load was much bigger compared to block printer. And so now what's happening right now, that these 3 producers are processing our fabric, and they're getting revenue by this thing. And as far as the cost recurring, when we are treating the water, we are selling it back to the member at the 25 paisa per liter. So that's our cost of maintenance and running the treatment plant.
Okay, more questions? I had one for you, Dr. Starkel, here about you said that only 15% of the performance of the wastewater treatment plant that you were evaluated. What do you think is the real figure? You did some of the wastewater treatment plant that you would like to evaluate, you didn't even get there. Do you have an idea how you come around this question? What is it possible? Is it blocked for you not to do this, or what's the problem?
I mean, you cannot just go to the plant during the night, take the water sample. So you have to ask them officially to allow it. You have to ask for permission. And if you ask for it, they simply would deny it.
That I understand fully, but I think the question has to be taken higher up, so you have some sort of official request to go and make the samples.
I mean, you tried to go the bureaucratic way in India, it would not move ahead.
No, I don't agree with you, though I'm not dealing with this issue. But if I don't give you permission, you go to my higher up. He will give. He will think why I am not giving permission, then he will sort out the thing. It is not that we don't allow agencies to visit our plants or this.
When we are talking about resource efficiency, and it deals with all over in whole of India, and it's a resource efficiency and circular economy. If we look at the water usage pattern, it's 79% is used, or around 80% is used by the agricultural sector, 9 or 10% by the industry, and similar by the domestic, very nearby percentages. When we talk of these treatments, it is at the end. But when we are talking about the agricultural sector, what is the wastage pattern? Why we don't have any case studies on this? Number one. Number two, when you are talking about the quality of water, then do we have some regulations, or any regulation is foreseen in the next few years, because that is essential, because in India we have electricity regulatory commissions, but we don't have water regulatory commissions. So it is in that context, if we can see these treatment technologies, then it will be more faster and useful. And finally, there are some intersectoral implications. If we see the strained areas of India, water strained areas, and if you also examine the tariffs of electricity, we can see that there is a nexus between agricultural water and energy consumption and energy subsidies. We also need to take this in context. If you can shed some light on the regulatory commission, on intersectoral reforms and quality of water regulations, it will be very helpful.
As you rightly mentioned that about 80% of the water, since I represent the water resources sector in my state, about 80% of the water is used in agriculture, it is a fact. And the state government, all state governments including Rajasthan, they are making efforts that if the efficiency of the water usage in agriculture sector is improved by a minimum of 10 to 15%, which is possible, then that water saved from the agriculture sector can be utilized, because the drinking water is the top priority for the entire country, including all the states. So that water can be used for drinking purposes. The state government, my state government is also working hard how to save water in agriculture. Number of studies have been carried out, and the most significant part is that now we are switching from the traditional flow irrigation to sprinkler and drip irrigation, which saves a lot of water.
Yeah, my name is Rupam. I'm with a company called ERM. My question is, we all know that India has just 4% of world's fresh water, and I heard today that of the water that India has available, only about 80% goes to agriculture. So obviously there is very little amount of water left for industrial use or for people in cities. So my question is, have you come across an event where lack of water, just it's not available, or poor quality of water that's available, where that has led to some sort of a disruption? It could be social breakdown, it could be a business disruption where you have to just shut down your factory because there's no water. So have you come across that, such an event, and if you have, what do you do?
Big industry in Rajasthan, every city, every village would have a block printing community. When I now look at the industry, or when I say industry, it's not actually industry, it's a cottage-based craft. Only 5% has been left, and just because we don't have water to process the fabric. So the whole craft has lost, the whole designs have been lost, whole technology has been lost. When I started my career, I started working with the natural colors. My job was to document the traditional prints, that's why I got into it. And I remember meeting a lot of these old printers, and they would say, oh, well, I used to print with this particular vegetable and this and that, and that whole craft is lost. So it's a monumental loss, and the blocks have been deteriorated. There's been sold through these souvenir shops to, tourists and guys.
And you think that's because of lack of resource, not because of mechanization or?
Just because we don't have enough water to treat the fabric. If you look at places like Pawali, Balodra, Samdari, Bardmer, Jaisalmer, there were huge centers of block printing textile, time. Now you hardly see maybe a couple of families left who would be doing it, when they have been doing it because either they have access to a ready market which is next door, or some textile export souvenir shop is buying stuff from them. Otherwise, it's gone completely.
I just shared an experience of a printer in Balotra, and Balotra and Pali, just as Vikram mentioned, was one of the prominent centers, and you got to visit Balotra sometime. It's called, interestingly called the petticoat capital of the country, because apparently maximum fabric of petticoats is died over there. It's really. I mean, the local river there is nothing but a drain. It's almost gone. You can't even locate where it is. That is a state of environmental degradation over there. So let me quickly come back to this particular experience that was shared by the printer. And he said, I spoke to him about the quality of the color and the fastening, and why it is not the same as it was 25 years ago when I used to buy fabric. The colors were much faster and lasted longer, and now they seem to fade very quickly. And he told me it's because of the water quality. The water available to them is of poor quality, and therefore the colors do not fasten and stay that much.
So we begin the final session of the day, EU-India Cooperation on Environment and the Way Forward. I would like to welcome Mr. Rajan Gandhi, CEO, Society in Action Group. He will discuss sustainability criteria in the circular economy, role of Indian consumption and production patterns. Mr. Gandhi.
Can we lower my... Thank you very much. For those of you who don't know who I am or what I do, I spent 33 years in the private sector before turning to the public, to becoming an NGO. And in those 33 years, I spent most of my time either selling something or buying something, which explains my interest in consumption, production, and especially sustainable consumption and production. I'd like to take off from, I think, where Mr. Savik Bhattacharya is not here, but he talked this morning in one of the first few presentations about the depletion of natural resources, depletion of resources of all kinds, which was followed by several sessions on concerns expressed about waste, how to control waste, how to reduce waste, and water. Now, I've been thinking all this while over coffee, over tea, over lunch, that the best way to conserve resources, the best way to stop waste and waste problems and control water management is to stop consuming altogether. If you don't consume, there's no resources used and there's no waste generated. That, however, is a very unlikely kind of situation. So let's start with something that most of you would be familiar about, and that is something from Abraham Maslow and the, what's happening here? Theory of need hierarchy. If we look at the average Indian household, you have needs, you have intermediates, and you have your wants, your aspirations. Your food, clothing, shelter, your roti, kapda or makan is your basic needs. Yeah? At the intermediate level, you have your other wants or other needs, education, mobility. And then you come to your aspirations. When something like mobility translates from taking the metro from Gurgaon, where I live, to the Habitat Center, to driving a car. And then from driving a car to saying not a Maruti 800 or an Alto, to driving a Mercedes, and from not a Mercedes to a Porsche. So this is the area which creates the problems. You cannot stop the Indian from having, or anybody, from having their basic needs. Your intermediate needs are intermediate for us as Indians, but for the rest of the world, they're very basic needs. It's what we need to attack or what we need to try and control is your aspirational needs. Oops, again, let's take household consumption, and this is something that this slide I've been using for a very, very long time. Look at the figures here. So, price is the only criterion for PSUs. Challenges. I've already mentioned this. When we don't have an eco label, how do you identify what is genuinely more environment friendly than the other, or more sustainable? Let's go beyond environment friendly. Price is a challenge. Okay, let's kid ourselves. There's lots of people who turn around and say, no, environmentally friendly goods are cheaper in the long run, and so on. Look, when you're broke, you're talking about the immediate situation. You're talking about maximum medium term. You're not worried about the long term. Availability. Lots of genuinely environment friendly products are just not available, and if they are available, not in adequate quantities, so the price is high. I mentioned the absence of incentives or disincentives. I talked about fiscal incentives, but how about legislative incentives and disincentives? These are one of the challenges which we need to confront. Capacity building and awareness generation is the final one that I have listed. Maybe you can think of more. We honestly don't have the capacity. Again, in the same GIZ sponsored study that I was asking, when I was asking purchase managers, they said, all right, we think this is more environment friendly. So I said, have you looked at it from an LCA basis, a life cycle analysis basis? They said, what's LCA? We're that badly off. We need to build not only capacity, we first need to start with awareness creation and then build the capacity for it. Okay, that's about it. I'll be happy to answer any questions if there is time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Most inspiring. Thank you very much.
Following this interesting insight on Indian consumption patterns and their sustainability, I would like to invite Dr. Anne-Marie Groot to present a future EU initiative starting its activities, Casco, Climate Adaptation and Service Community.
Good afternoon. For those who are not present this morning, my name is Anne-Marie Groot. I'm working for the Wageningen University and Research Center in the Netherlands, and my field of interest is climate change adaptation and especially the institutional policy and the business aspects of it. I would like to inform you about a new initiative that is called Casco. And Casco stands for Climate Adaptation and Services Community. It is a new Europe Aid supported initiative that aims to strengthen the cooperation between India and Europe. It started at the end of 2014 and it will continue till the end of 2018. It involves 9 core partners, and here you can see the names of the organizations involved in the core group. Alterra, which is part of the Wageningen University and Research Center, is coordinating this project, and you see quite a number of research institutes, universities, but also NGOs from Europe, different European countries and India. This core group is nested in a larger network, and the members of these networks are all involved in climate change adaptation.
So essentially, so it's funded by EU and IFC is implementing it. For those of you not familiar with IFC, we are the private sector arm of the World Bank. We work with the private sector both on advisory services and also investment. And this program really, we were very interested in working on it because it's consistent with our philosophy of, supporting sustainable transformation of Indian cities. And since we are part of the World Bank, I think we can bring in both the private sector and the public sector. And we believe to have a transformative impact in India, you really need both. The public sector can only do so much, the private sector can do so much. So I think this program nicely brings all the parties together. So this is actually a 4-year technical assistance program, and to address the rapid urbanization in India. We heard, India is only 30% urbanized, and it's going to get rapidly urbanized. So a lot of people are going to move into the cities, and so cities are important for development, obviously, but cities is also the places where all the problems of energy insecurity, water shortage, poor infrastructure manifest themselves. So you really have, this is why IFC, not only in India, but globally, we are focusing on cities. And this program specifically focuses on, financing and developing clean energy and energy efficiency intervention in 5 cities, and I'll mention those cities. So we really have 3 partners, National Housing Bank in India, Tata Capital, and we also have a European partner called PE International. They are green building experts, they help design the German Green Building Code, and they've been advising IFC. And then we also have a MOU with CREDAI, which is the National Association of Realtors, as you know, and this is for the green building projects we will be developing. One thing I wanted to mention that we're calling it eco-cities, and of course there's been a lot of talk about smart cities, but as I will show, our program is really a subset of the whole smart cities agenda. So we actually selected these cities almost 1 year ago. This is our tentative list, and as it happens, they're all on the Government of India's draft list of 100 smart cities, because these are high growth cities. The building stock is increasing, so there are good opportunities for working on resource efficient buildings, so we don't lock up inefficient infrastructure. 2 of them are low income states, mostly are state capitals. But another reason we chose these cities because the World Bank Group has good relationships in some of these cities, either through our PPP projects or other projects. So what we're trying to do is actually meet with the Ministry of Urban Development, to get some of these cities finalized. Of course, since this is a workshop on circular economy, just wanted to mention quickly that obviously smart cities support the circular economy. If a city has waste piling on the streets, or if you turn the tap on, there's no water, that's not a smart city. So obviously you have to look at efficient management of water, energy, managing waste as valuable resources, more productive use of materials, energy, water, and of course, you're already familiar with all those things. Use less toxic materials, recycle waste, recycle e-waste, recycle wastewater for productive industrial use. We heard about the example earlier from the textile sector, waste to energy solutions. Now this is of interest specifically because if you think about it, at least on paper, it sounds like this could be a good solution to address the dual challenges of waste management and energy insecurity, if you can generate energy from waste. But then we heard yesterday that there are only 2 full-scale operating waste-to-energy plants in India.
We heard from the beginning a huge demand also on the natural resources at the end, and these are finite resources. I think that was extremely good. And I think also Anne-Marie Groot's presentation here is extremely important, because there are a huge amount of climate change report. They're very scientifically oriented, it's typical for science, but not very achievable for all kind of purpose. So you're, as being a mediator between these 2 things, I think extremely important. You can deliver this for whatever target group you have, and your summer school definitely will be a lot of people to come to. So I think it has been a good. And I also finally the presentation now about the Ms. Navnet about the eco-cities is a huge challenges. But I would also like to add, those cities are already in place, many of them. And I think that's important also, that we have, otherwise we talk about things that we would like to create, whatever, this is typical, but I think we should also demonstrate them in reality. We have these smart cities in Europe already in place. So I think those are study objects from anyone to come there, that they have to be transformed to the Indian way of looking into it as a transformation. We cannot sell the concept from the European perspective right over, but lots of the technology, the synergies between different kind of sectors is extremely important. What I've learned when we put up green cities in China, for instance, we organized meeting with the decision makers there. That was the first time they were sitting together around the same table and have a vision for the future. They have never experienced that before. So there's a lot of venues, and as you said right now, doors open for new examples. I wish you all luck with this huge project. Are there any immediate questions on the floor? I will give you a few of them before I let Johan Hesse take the decision. Please.
I'm Arvinder Brara, Chairman and Managing Director of Mantech Consultants. This question, I have two questions, one for Rajan Gandhi and one for Navneet. Rajan Gandhi, the quick question is that you have a very valid point to try and help reduce consumption. As an NGO, would you like to consider having some role models of people who actually consume less and they can be publicized? So that's one question. And to Navneet, the question is that in the smart cities concept, on wastewater there is a technology, root zone treatment, which helps sewage treatment. That technology does away with the conventional method of using energy to treat sewage and in fact produces fertilizer and water can be recycled. And this is, I think, it was started in Europe. So I'd like to know whether you're considering that.
Yes, it's very easy to point out public figures who are examples of unsustainability. Public figures of sustainability, I wouldn't like to mention them openly, but I know, and I'm sure you do, I have two personal friends. One is the chairman emeritus of a South Indian industrial group, extremely wealthy person. You go to his house, you will get pani, your water, in a stainless steel glass. Another is a leading industrialist family in Ahmedabad. Again, they have been industrialists, I'm sure you can guess who. They have been educationists, they have been scientists, they have promoted the IIM Ahmedabad. Extremely simple, humble people. I don't wish to particularly name anybody one way or the other. If you
examples in India, there are good examples in terms of technologies. We have heard a lot about technologies today that are available, that have been tested, that have been researched, that are being researched, that are being proposed, that are being brought here and applied here. So there are good examples in terms of technology. There are very good examples in terms of best practices, of lessons learned, of projects and activities that are being carried out, including those that receive EU funds. So we are very happy to be part of that, and I'd just like to highlight again, good examples are there. But the issue is, the third point is the upscaling. Many of you today also spoke about upscaling, but then the question is, how should this be done, and who is in charge even, and who is doing what in that context. And we just discussed a lot today about case studies from municipalities. We discussed a lot today about the Rajasthan water program, which is at the level of the state. But also we heard a lot about legislation and policies, which is something where the center plays a role. So here we are, we have different institutions involved in this. So when we talk about upscaling, then the question is from where to where and who's in charge for that. And I believe, I mean, if I understood correctly, if my interpretation is correct, I believe that the states actually play a very key role here, because whatever municipalities do, there is some reporting upwards to the state level. And the funding from the center, a lot of this funding from the center is also being channeled through the states. And as we have heard, and we will probably hear on Saturday when the budget is finally being announced, but we will, there are some indications that the amount of money going to the states will even increase, or at least the percentage of the taxes that the center collects going to the states will increase. So the role of the states seems to be crucial here. So then the question is, when we're talking about upscaling, as I said, we have to be a little bit smarter perhaps ourselves, and think about these issues of the best practice and the policies and all the rest, and make sure that we actually address the right level when we are discussing these things. And related to the upscaling, the fourth point is the legislation. People yesterday mentioned this, and also today it came through many times, the issue of the implementation of legislation. Sometimes there are legal frameworks, but the question is about the implementation. And again, there are different levels here. Some legislation affects, I mean, it's the level of the municipality. In some cases we are talking about the state, and in some cases we talk about the center. And I think what is the issue here is the clarity, the institutional clarity, at which level is supposed to be what. So this I think it's a very important thing. In conclusion for me, that I believe there's some work that needs to be done. If we are talking about a technology, if we're talking about a practical example, if we want to make sure that it's related to it's helping to implement legislation. I really thank you all for this event. Thank you so much.